Howard's Arcade and the Bitpoly arcade machine has kind of become a urban legend around our quiet town. But for people like me who actually experienced what happened, it's more than just an old campfire story. I feel like as if I'm almost going insane, just trying to solve the mystery around this place. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I should probably explain what I've been babbling on about. Allow me set the scene. It was the winter of '84 in our little farm community, and since the town's pool had been shut down for the season, there was really nothing to do well. Except for Howard's Arcade. Now you have to understand that this was the '80s, and home consoles weren't mainstream yet, so the only way to play video games was to go down to the local arcade with a pocket full of quarters. And the owner of Howard's was already known in the community for making arcade machines, and not even good ones at that. He would usually make bootleg machines of the classics. And at the time, new games such as Pac-Man and Centipede, then would rent them out to local birthday parties and carnivals. He was also known to be very inclusive. He never had a wife, which was strange for someone in their 40s, or any friends that we knew of. He would just sit, building away in his garage. But anyway, the arcade opened at the beginning of January, and it was an immediate hit with the local kids. I remember countless Fridays at Howard's with my friend Teddy. With all account, it wasn't even that grand of a arcade. It was just a normal brick building with a neon sign that read, Howard's Arcade. And the inside was a dimly lit room with rows of arcade machines. But hey, we loved it. Now, I wouldn't be writing this if it wasn't for Bitpoly. The owner brought the arcade machine in one early Saturday and told us it was a new game he developed, and he would even set it on free play for us to try. Of course, being kids, we jumped on the opportunity to play a new game. The cabinet it was in was nothing to write home about. It was all red, and at the top was simple yellow text that said, Bitpoly, with a joystick and a button. The gameplay was where it got strange. You played as a black figure in front of a fully red background. You would walk around shooting other black figures with a shotgun you could pick up. Every time you shot someone, it gave you points. For the '80s, this was a pretty violent game, at least with other games of the time. You had a laser gun or something, but with you just straight up had a shotgun, and on top of that it was low quality, even for the time. The way the arcade was treated was also strange. At the end of every week, instead of taking out the coin bucket from the machine like he usually did, he would take out a spherical cab, bring it to his desk, bring back a new one, and put it back in. Despite all this, the game was strangely addictive, like it was pulling you in to play it. By the time you had to stop playing, your fingers would hurt, and your skin would be pale. I suppose it's time I tell you about what happened that fateful Friday night. It was a normal day, just like any other. The owner forgot to take out the canister that week, but of course I didn't think anything about it. What happened that day is all just a blur to me. But I remember playing the Bitpoly machine, but the longer I played, I started to realize how bad the machine smelled. I could only compare to a rotting corpse. But then it happened. I saw the blood oozing out the sides of the arcade. I almost threw up. I ran up to my mom and told her what happened. The last thing I remember was sitting in my car, looking out the back window at the arcade, with countless police cars surrounding it. And while we drove away, I could see the owner being put into a police car. And that was it. The police was very secretive about the whole thing. We never saw the owner again, and the arcade got shut down the day after for health hazards. The whole place was gutted after that, but the memory still loomed on in the back of my head for the rest of my childhood, until just a few weeks ago, while visiting my mom, the subject of Howard's Arcade came up, and I asked her what happened. She looked at me for a second, and then explained that when I told her about the blood, she called the police. The police did a full investigation. It was found out that the owner had put tiny pricks on the buttons of Bitpoly that would collect blood from your fingers and would store it in a little canister. She said that was all that was told to the parents. My interest in the mystery of this arcade was reignited after what my mom told me. I just need some closure of what happened to the owner, and where did they take the Bitpoly arcade machine? There's a million questions I still don't know the answer to, and knowing that it's possible that the owner may have sold other Bitpoly machines to different arcades, I'm not gonna quit digging deeper into this until I get some type of closure. Taiwan is a beautiful place. The scenery and nature are just a short train ride away. The nightlife is everywhere. One of my favorite places to go are the night markets. It dominates as both local and tourist attraction. The food is cheap and delicious, ranging from cold crepes and bubble tea to freshly made pepper buns. The most important thing, though, are the arcades. Nightlife in Taipei mixes the three elements: food, shopping, and games. Arcades are unbelievably cheap. It's 50 cents a pop and definitely winnable. On good days and certain machines, you can get them between 1 to 3 tries. They will assist you with a guaranteed win if you fail after 15 to 25 tries, too. I've been to Taipei countless of times, and I've never not enjoyed myself. Every time I would bring a whole luggage of toys back. Some are even too huge to fit, and I'd hand carry it onto the plane as a pillow. This trip was exactly the same. At this point, I guess you could say it was becoming a routine. The vendors are always changing since you only visit once a year or so. Imagine my delight when a new arcade opened up, right by the alley of a popular night market. I dove right in. No, it wasn't abandoned or empty or had creepy atmosphere. It was, in fact, crowded. If anything was amiss, I'd have left anyway. I wouldn't explore it and stay another second. I'm not the fear and adrenaline or stupid type of person you see around here often. No offense. There were sections of the arcade, small and lower height machines for the kids and the normal-sized ones. I could see people with baskets full of toys. That was how easy it was to win and the reason for the crowd. I took a basket and went to the coin exchange counter. Arcade machine doesn't give you tokens here. You just change big notes for coins of lower denomination. Some machines require 2 per play. Most just require 1, though. The lady tossed me a unique black token for good luck, too. For a special machine per $20 exchanged. I've never had this happen. I was thrilled. I began my collecting spree. There were YouTubers filming their loot, kids trying to catch miniature bananas, and couples on dates trying to impress each other. Even though I was alone, I still enjoyed myself the same. There is peace in solidarity. At the end of 30 minutes, I had used up my currency save the special token. I had 2 soft and fluffy bunny, 3 different bananas with emojis on their face, 1 huge long red bunny, and an authentic Pokemon soft toy of Latios. All that for $20. Very worth it, in my opinion. All that was left was to use the special token. Upon closer inspection, it was actually intricately designed. It had a gold outline circling it, and in the middle was the arcade's logo, which was a bunny with X's eyes, if that makes sense. It was both cute and intricately designed. I decided to keep it as a souvenir instead. Unfortunately, I was stopped by the same lady from the counter. "You have to use or give back. No take home. We only have few for customer, specially made." Oh, makes sense, I guess. If everyone took it home, there wouldn't be enough. She pointed to the machine in the corner. At this point, I figured there's no harm. The arcade is crowded, and why waste a free play? As I approached the machine, I could see it was different. Not sinisterly different, but rather the contents. Most machines contained soft toys or products you can see. This machine contained capsules, which are all black and opaque. It was impossible to see through. Being half Asian, I could read and understand Chinese, and the signs explained it was a random chance for anything inside, while not exactly explaining what inside was. Confusing. Nevertheless, I popped the coin in and went for the nearest ball to the drop point. I hit the plastic border instead and didn't manage to grab a capsule. The lady approached me. The first thing I noticed was her disappointment and a slight hint of anger. I'm not sure why, but she handed me another token for a free try. Well, Feeling bad and that I would be taking advantage of her kindness, I declined. It was my fault that I missed anyway. All these while we conversed in broken English, trying to understand each other, and I was about to speak up in Chinese to make it easier. She got more and more pushy, agitated even. As I was about to speak up in Chinese, another man from the counter spoke up. He spoke in Chinese, probably thinking I wouldn't understand. It translates to roughly the following: "Let her go. There will always be another one. She is a tourist anyway. Local is better." I tried to keep a poker face and acted confused. Eventually, she gave up and left me alone. I took a plastic bag and filled up the toys I'd won. Before leaving, I saw another girl my age going for the special machine. But this time, she got it. I stuck by a corner to observe when the two, whom I presume are the owners, smiled at me. I literally ran away and didn't look back once. It may be crowded and shit, but that definitely wasn't natural. I didn't stick around to find out what was inside or what happened to the girl. But I don't think it's anything good. 2 days later, on the last day of my trip, I revisited the night market and passed by the same alley, only to realize the arcade was gone. There was not a trace of it. It would take weeks to move out the machines and clean up, but it was as if it didn't existed. I asked the local store owners, and despite expecting the response, it chilled me to the core. "What arcade? That alley has been closed for years." When I was 12, my friends and I would visit arcades every Saturday. We'd ride on our bikes into town with pocketfuls of quarters and dollar bills. We'd work hard to earn the allowance that would allow us hours of gaming time. There were 3 arcades to choose from, and we'd always play rock, paper, scissors over who'd choose where we go. Between me and my 3 friends, Ryan, Bree, and Jacob, I'd usually win. Not that it really mattered. I usually choose the arcade that all of us wanted to go to anyway. It was near the beginning of summer that a new arcade opened. Flyers were on the doors of all the houses that had children in them. The place was called Clifford Clown's Arcade. Next to the logo was a clown with a red nose and excessively large eyes. I figured that must have been Clifford Clown. My friends and I were ecstatic, of course. It was 10 times the excitement of discovering one of the arcades had a new game. Especially because the flyer said that each game was just a nickel. That Saturday, my friends and pedaled as fast as we could to the address of the new arcade, pockets filled as many nickels we could find. It didn't take long before we arrived. The building was tall, and it looked to have about 2 stories. It was painted different colors, red, green, and blue. Above the door was a sign that read, "Clifford Clown's Arcade." My friends and I were giddy with excitement. We parked our bikes and ran as fast as we could into the arcade. The inside was even better than the out. There were hundreds of games, there was laser tag, and the decorations made the place look even more exciting. The place was packed with children, all of them cramming their coins into the games happily. There was also a room that led to the stairs, but that was off limits. There was an "Employees Only" sign on it. Not that anyone noticed or cared. They were too caught up in the games to notice the door. There were also odd-looking mascots walking around. They were all dressed in costumes which consisted of white face paint, red noses, drawn-on smiles, and multicolored clown suits. They called themselves Clifford Clown's Friends. They looked weird to me, but some kids wanted hugs and autographs from them. They all happily obliged and handed out pins with Clifford Clown's face on it to anyone who wanted one. Something about them seemed off to me. I told my friends this, and while Bree agreed with me, Ryan and Jacob didn't. They too wanted autographs and pins. Bree and I decided just to ignore the clowns and play the arcade games. That's what we went to the arcade for after all, and besides, they were extremely fun games. Some of them I hadn't even seen before. After a few hours of being there, the clowns made an announcement that Clifford Clown was going to visit us. Everyone cheered, and as soon as he made his appearance, the kids went crazy. Bree and I kept our distance from him, but Ryan and Jacob joined the crowd in welcoming Clifford Clown down. Clifford Clown didn't look like the other clowns. He was short and wore a mask that looked like the cartoon clown on the flyer. The mask looked old and faded, and he never spoke. He made me nervous. Still, I ignored it and kept playing. An hour later, my friends and I ran out of coins. Bree and I wanted to leave, but Ryan and Jacob didn't. I made some excuse about how my mom wanted me home for a special dinner, and I was eventually able to get Jacob to agree that it was time to go. Ryan, however, wanted to stay longer. We told him fine, but he'd be riding his bike home alone. I still regret that. The next day, we got news that Ryan still hadn't come home yet. His mother had called mine in hopes that he'd be there. A few days later, the cops had come to question me, as they had done with my other two friends. I told them that we'd left Ryan there because he didn't want to come home with us. We told him that he had to ride his bike home alone. The cops assumed that someone must have kidnapped him on his way home that night. There was posters everywhere with his face on it, and warnings to parents not to let their children go anywhere alone. A few days later, another kid went missing, then another. By that point, people were worried out of their minds. I was worried about Ryan, but I knew there was nothing I could do about it. When Saturday rolled around, my mother was reluctant to let me go to the arcade. I told her I'd be with friends and that we'd be together the whole time. She gave in and let me go, but she told me to be home by 4 o'clock. I agreed, and soon, my friends and I were all on our bikes. Jacob had won rock, paper, scissors that day, and decided that he wanted to go to Clifford Clown's arcade. Bree and I didn't want to go there, but he had won rock, paper, scissors, so we didn't have a choice. Quickly, we dashed to the arcade and began to play the games. It was a while before Clifford Clown made an appearance. This was different from last time, though. He seemed slightly taller, and his costume was new. The mask didn't look old and faded, but as if it was just made. Again, I ignored him and continued to play games. Every time I turned to look over my shoulder, though, I could feel Clifford Clown's eyes watching me. When finally 3:50 came around, I was relieved. Quickly, I told Bree and Jacob we had to leave. Jacob was sad that he had to go, but he still left with us. It was when we were down the road from the building that I looked back at the arcade. I saw Clifford Clown staring at me from a window on the second floor, and it looked like he was watching me leave. Angrily, he banged against the glass before some of his clown friends pulled him away and covered the window up. 4 days later, a total of 6 kids had gone missing. All of them had one thing in common, something the police had finally decided to look into. Soon, we'd gotten the news. The missing children case-solved police have finally solved the case after discovering that all the children had gone missing after visiting Clifford Clown's arcade. Because of that, law enforcement decided to pay the establishment a visit. They were greeted by smiling faces, but what stood beneath the surface is what is most disturbing. The owner of the arcade, Jeff Andrews, was found murdered in the upstairs employees' only area by a cult. The cult had gone as far as to impersonating Andrews in order to pay the bills to keep the place running. They also dressed as the Clifford Clown's friends' mascots and gave hugs, autographs, and Clifford Clown pins to the visiting children. Not only was Andrews found, but the dead bodies of 3 of the missing children were found as well. The other 3 children were alive, but their mouths, along with the mouths of the deceased, were sewn shut. It appears that they were forced to wear the Clifford Clown mask and even forced to walk around the arcade as the Clifford Clown mascot.